What's up, guys? Rick here with your DFS preview for this week's CJ Cup. Back-to-back weeks in Las Vegas, and we have an unbelievable field. We've got an excellent course with absolutely no history, so we can talk about that process, and it should be a lot of fun. A couple of things here off at the top. Last week, I made an offer to you to fill out a very short survey. It is linked in the description. I'm going to do this one more week. Basically just ask you what site you play on, what type of content you're interested in, and if you have any questions, content ideas, tool ideas, things like that, because I'll be spending the 3 weeks in between Mayakoba and the Tournament of Champions basically redoing everything on the website. So I have a lot of great ideas in mind. I've already started with it. A lot of it will be back-end data stuff that you guys won't ever see, but the tools are going to get some significant upgrades I think you'll really enjoy. And this is your one opportunity to provide some feedback, some thoughts, and anything that you want. They may be considered and they're much appreciated. In return for that, I've got a bunch of t-shirts, hats, water bottles, logo golf balls. I've got merch. So what I've said I will do is I will just randomly pick a bunch of people who have filled out this survey. Again, probably take you like a minute, tops 2 minutes. It helps you, it helps me, and you can win some merch along the way. Additionally, there are 2 live streams this week. There is the usual Wednesday live stream CJ Cup preview. That's going to be 3 p.m. Eastern time on Wednesday. And then there is one on Wednesday morning, 10:30 Eastern time, where this is actually going to be, if you've been paying attention, if you've been following along, I've been trying to foster this idea of season-long fantasy golf in a similar way that season-long fantasy football is played, with the idea to start a season around the Sony Open. So I've gotten a couple of volunteers. There are 12 of us who are going to run a mock league from this week through Mayakoba. So essentially 7 weeks to test everything out, waivers and trading and all that stuff. And I'm going to live stream the live draft. So that we can talk about questions. We can talk about formats for season-long fantasy. Should be a lot of fun. So 2 different live streams on Wednesday. Go to youtube.com/RickRunGood. Set a reminder. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you're getting notifications when I go live so that you don't miss out on either one of these streams. All right, I think that's it. Let's jump into this week's DFS preview. All right, so this week, CJ Cup at Shadow Creek. That says at Showdown Creek. I will obviously fix that typo. It's at Shadow Creek in Las Vegas, and there's a couple of things to point out. Obviously, it's a field of 78. It's a no-cut event this week and next week, similar in that fashion. We have not seen Shadow Creek on the PGA Tour. It's not a regular PGA Tour stop. It's never been used on the PGA Tour. This is an exclusive club. I think you have to be staying at MGM at one of their resorts, and then I think it's pretty expensive, and you got to do the whole rigmarole. I mean, it's exclusive stuff. Now, you might remember it from Tiger versus Phil, the first match. This is where they played 18 holes. Then they went to that, par 3, like to break the tie. They were hitting off of a mat, I think, from like 90 yards out. It was kind of weird, but this is the course. And a couple things about it, because we don't know much about it, but from what I know about it is it's not true desert golf. I think a lot of the feedback that you hear about Shadow Creek is that it looks like it might be Midwest golf. It might be Michigan. It might be Ohio. It's very lush. It's kind of just dropped right here in the middle of the desert. It might be a little bit jarring. If you just watch on the telecast, you might not think they're actually in Vegas, as opposed to last week where they were very clearly in the middle of the desert. So it's a little bit like that. Gonna play about 7,500 yards. It is a par 72. It's a Tom Fazio design. It is bent grass green. So I do have a couple of comp courses here, which are just par 72 bent grass greens. So Medina is similar in both length and bent grass, in the fact that it's bent grass and that it is a par 72. Augusta, of course, shows up here as well. Torrey Pines, a little bit shorter. That's the North course. And then actually the club at Nine Bridges, which is the course that would have held the CJ Cup this year, also falls on that list as well. Because we don't have any history here, I obviously don't have any of the correlated key stats for this week. So what I'm showing you, like I did a couple of weeks ago, is basically the averages, all PGA Tour events, what stats are the most important. Approach the green, always the most important. Birdie or better percentage, those rank 1 and 2 when you average out everything across the PGA Tour. All right, let's go to the cheat sheet. Let's start talking through this field because there's a lot to digest. There are a lot of great players here, and the pricing is fairly interesting. 6 golfers over $10,000. Jon Rahm leads the way at $11,300 over Dustin Johnson at $11,100. I know it's only $200 difference, but I was a little bit surprised to see DJ not be the most expensive golfer. I mean, he is, or he did open as the betting favorite. I think he was 8.5 to 1. He had the shortest odds, but Jon Rahm gets the nod from DraftKings here. Justin Thomas, 10,800. Rory McIlroy, 10.6. Xander Schauffele, 10.3. And Matthew Wolff at a flat 10,000. Does he deserve to be in that $10,000 tier? I certainly think so. In fact, Matthew Wolff, and I've talked about this countless times over the past 2 months, and I've said the same thing every single time. His game continues to mature week over week so quickly that he's actually outpacing a lot of my models, because a lot of the models that we do, they incorporate long-term and short-term stuff. And because he's improving so quickly, it's almost like the model hasn't caught up to him yet. It's really impressive stuff. Got into a playoff last week, ends up losing to Martin Laird, who finally is victorious after, I believe it was 2 playoff holes last week. But his game is so sharp. You put him in a 4-round no-cut event. He has the ability to go super low like we saw at Shriners last week. He just makes a ton of birdies. He's great for fantasy scoring. Speaking of the no-cut guys, Justin Thomas, 10,800, probably objectively like the best value of the 10K guys. You could probably put Xander Schauffele in there as well, although JT wins more often than Xander has. Xander is one of the hottest players on tour. I think he's got like 8 straight top 25s. He won the Shadow leaderboard at the Tour Championship. That's if you remove all of the starting strokes from everybody. And he finished 5th at the U.S. Open. I mean, the guy's in unbelievable form, and both Xander and JT thrive in these no-cut events. I think JT's won 9 of his 13 PGA Tour event titles are either short field and or no-cut events, which usually go hand in hand, obviously. And then Xander, 3 of his 4 victories are the same thing. So what we can actually do, because this is a really strong narrative this week, especially because we don't have a lot of other data to go off of, is we can use the holy grail here to try to find some trends and try to find some players to look at and maybe separate some of these guys, because it's hard when you have so many great players in the same pricing tier. So this is actually part of the strokes gain database. You can go into the holy grail, and I've loaded in the CJ Cup field, and we can break this down. So, just looking, let's start with most recent form, right? And I've been using the restart. January 1st, I still think, now we've got a bunch of tournaments here. You can see the tournaments that we have loaded in. We can look at this as a way to try to separate some golfers. So if you want to, we can sort this by strokes gain total. And of course, some guys will have more, but no surprise to see Dustin Johnson, 11,100 as the best player since the restart. He's gaining 1.8 strokes per round on the rest of the field. Right behind him, Xander Schauffele, again, not much of a surprise. Justin Thomas, and then Daniel Berger. That's your first real, value, right? I mean, the other 3 guys are 3 of the most expensive guys on the slate, 3 of the top 5. Berger, $1,500 cheaper, interesting option. Jon Rahm is next, and then Harris English. Again, there's your there's your value. Now, Harris English just missed the cut last week, which was one of the longest active cut streaks on the PGA Tour. I imagine he might be a little bit, under-owned, a little bit forgotten this week. But outside of just 1 week at the Shriners, which he didn't play all that poorly, right? I think he was 5 or 6 under. It was a ridiculous cut line, 7 under par to get you to the weekend last week. Forgive and forget with Harris English. Now he's only $8,600. And here's Matthew Wolff. And the last point, I could spend a full hour on what I really like about Matthew Wolff. But what I do think, and this is not just for him, but this is for other young guys, sometimes on the PGA Tour, when we go to a place that no one has played or that very few guys have played competitively, it usually helps the younger guys. And if you think about it, Dustin Johnson, Webb Simpson's not in this field, but like Webb Simpson's a good example. He's probably played every PGA Tour course 5 times, 10 times, heck, maybe even 12 times. And Matthew Wolff has played these places maybe once. But he's playing a lot of them for the first time. Well, now you go to a place where everyone's playing it for the first time. It tends to help the younger guys a little bit because they're not behind the 8 ball of having years and years of course history and course knowledge under their belt. So if you don't like, the range of January or June 1st, since the restart, maybe we just want to see how these guys have done historically on bent grass. So we'll let this load here for a second. It's a lot of data. Let's let it run. There we go. Okay, so bent grass, we can look at this a couple of ways. Jon Rahm and Justin Rose have been great on bent grass over the last 5 or 6 seasons. But, with putting surfaces, we might just want to look at the putting numbers. So let me sort this by strokes gained putting and see if there's any guys that stand out here. And the first one, the king of Las Vegas, Kevin Na, only $6,700, played awesome for 3 rounds last week before shooting like 77, 76 on Sunday. He was like, 8 strokes off the field average. Really, really bad. Besides that round, he played great last week. He has been phenomenal on bent grass putting over his career. Matthew Fitzpatrick doesn't have as many measured rounds, but he's been good. Adam Hadwin, always a great putter. And there's that name again, Harris English, popping up 4th in this field in strokes gained putting on bent grass. Might be something to Harris English. He's now 2 for 2 in some of the ways that we've dissected and filtered this. And then the last one that I'll do, let's try to do the no cut tournaments. And I will preface this by saying not all of these have strokes gained data, but let's at least try and see what we can get here. So no cut events. I'm just going to try to do these off the top of my head here. You can go through and you can do these yourself. Actually, I've got to get off of bent grass here. So let's do, all right, let's see if I can go through these really quickly, just kind of glancing at them. Hero World Challenge, pretty sure we don't have any data on that, but I'll bring it up. No, we don't. What else do we have here? Century Tournament of Champions. We'll add that one. We'll add CJ Cup, which this will be the first year of CJ Cup at Shadow Creek. We've got, let's see, Tour Championship. We're going to get into the World Golf events here in a second. I'm just making sure I'm not missing any. So let's do the WGCs, the Zozo. All right, that's at first glance. I think I got a lot of them. If I didn't get all of them, I think I got a lot of them. And again, not all of them have strokes gained data, but like, for example, Rory McIlroy leads the way in terms of strokes gained in these filtered events that I have put into the Holy Grail. So he's played 56 measured rounds in these events in the last 6 years, averaging nearly 2 strokes gained per round. Justin Thomas right behind. We've talked about his success in no-cut events. Xander is 4th. DJ is 3rd. Interesting name. I guess it's only 4 rounds. Carlos Ortiz, 6,400, only 4 rounds. Scotty Scheffler's next. He's played 12 rounds, so that's probably 3 measured events for him. He's 8,800. He's gained 1.2 strokes per round. So you can go through, you can see these names, you can see the guys that are finding success. Obviously, different parts of the world, different times of the year, but when you put the, top 30 or 78 players all together on the same course and you guarantee them all 4 rounds, who tends to come out on top? These are the names that tend to come out on top, which Usually the cream rises. Usually the cream rises to the top at these events, whether it's a WGC, whether it's the Zozo, whether it's the CJ Cup. They're stacked with names, and one of the big ones usually wins it. Sub $10,000 range. Cantlay's kind of interesting because he finishes 8th last week. He burns everybody on Sunday. Pretty uncharacteristic for him to go out and bogey, 4 of his first 6 holes. Kind of claws it back, ends up finishing 8th a little bit. Obviously plays well in Vegas. This is different than TPC Summerlin, but I do think there's going to be a lot of people who just say, no thanks, Patrick Cantlay this week. We'll check that projected ownership on Wednesday during the live chat. Brooks Koepka's back in the field. I personally have no idea what to do with Brooks. He is a past champion here. I think this is where he actually injured his knee the first time. And now he's kind of going through the same issues and rehabbing it again. Really, really worried about him. I'll take a wait and see approach. But then you get, the Tyrrell Hatton, right? Tyrrell Hatton wins on the European Tour last week. He's got to make the trek all the way over and try to play well again. As much as I love Hatton, I think that's a really tough task to come from Wentworth to Vegas and try to play well. He's phenomenal. I love him long term. He's now won 3 of his last 13 events, but probably going to be a little bit underweight on him this week. You want to buy back in on Colin Morikawa? I mean, here's a Vegas resident, misses the cut last week, burns everybody. He's now missed 2 cuts in a row pretty shockingly. Remember, he had the longest, cut streak to start your career outside of Tiger Woods. He was like 5 or 6 under last week. I mean, it's really hard. There's 2 ways you miss a cut, right? You play really bad and miss the cut, or like he didn't play all that poorly. Probably made a couple of strokes he didn't really love, made an extra bogey or 2, and he's on the outside looking in. I mean, you saw what Matthew Wolff did. Matthew Wolff, I don't know what number he made the cut at, but then you have one crazy Saturday, you get yourself into contention, and it's a completely different story. Like Colin Morikawa, not that far away from potentially being that guy. I think he's piles up into the buy low candidates. Tony Finau, still, as of recording this, in the field. Remember, he withdrew last week because he tested positive for COVID. I assume he's gone through the protocols. I think you have to test negative 2 days in a row, I think, to get back to, 24 hours apart to get back in, which I presume he did. Obviously, we'll update this and get him out if he ends up not playing. But as of recording this, he is in the field. Now, that gets us to who I think is probably maybe that best value, right? Like, I don't want to say that. I don't want to say he's best value. I think Daniel Berger has proven to us countless times over the past 6 months, he's the real deal. And he deserves to be in the same conversation as a lot of these guys that are priced higher than him. Patrick Cantlay, Tyrrell Hatton, Brooks Koepka currently in his form. Like, Daniel Berger certainly should be in those conversations. But the guy that I really am like kind of convincing myself might win this or might be the best value is Sungjae Im. He's $8,700. Let's jump over to the strokes gain database and talk through what I see from Sungjae and why I think he is so good for this week. I mean, we know it was a struggle for him in the restart. We know that, right? It was really bad. He couldn't strike the ball as well as he was doing before the break. But look what he did last week. He gained 9.2 strokes from tee to green. It was the 3rd best number in the field last week. I think only James Hahn and Martin Laird were actually better. So he gains 9.2 strokes from tee to green. The last time he did that was the Arnold Palmer Invitational right here in March, in which he finished 3rd, and the week before that, which is when he won at the Honda Classic. So he's getting back into that elite ball striking, that elite tee to green game that we saw early in 2020. Now I saw he was 45-1. I think I said he's 8,700 or 8,900 on DraftKings. This to me feels like trying to be early on Sungjae because I think we're trending right now. At the US Open, he gained nearly 8 strokes from tee to green. That was 3 starts ago. Now he gains over 9 in his last start. It feels like that trend is really going in the right direction for Sungjae. I think he can contend. I think he could win this. Now, you look back down here, Sungjae might be the last guy I think can win this. Further down, we talk about the cream rising to the top. I still think, Harris English showed up a bunch on our on all the kind of ways that we filtered the data. He's 8,600. And I think Louis great. Louis was a guy that I said, I think we need to consider buying back into last week after he WD'd 2 weeks ago. That would have been Sanderson, right? So he WDs before the thing even starts, doesn't end up playing it. So now he's gone 19th at the Shriners, which in thanks to a really great final round. He finished 3rd at the US Open. He's got 4 consecutive top 25 finishes. We can joke about what kind of win equity that he actually has, especially in this type of event. But Louis Oosthuizen at $8,500 feels like a really solid anchor in a lot of potential lineups. He's been playing really well at the moment. Ricky Fowler. I'm going to try to pull up something on Ricky Fowler real quick because I alluded to this earlier. Let me see if I can find the actual scorecard. All right, here's Ricky's scorecard from the Shriners last week. And he goes out, shoots a 67 on Thursday. He's got everybody with the warm and fuzzies. Then he shoots a 74 on Friday and misses the cut. But I would argue, and like I mentioned earlier, there are a couple of ways to miss cuts. The way that Ricky does it is he goes 5 over on 2 holes on 16 and 17 on Friday. So 5 over on those 2 holes. This is a round that he still made. He made 4 birdies in. He made a couple other bogeys on a par 5. He was already out of it by that point. I think he started on the. Let me see where he started. I think he started on 10. So by the time he got to 8 and 9, he was already out of it. He bogeys those last 2. I think you could make a case for this just going awry on 2. 16, I think he put a couple in the water, right? Yeah. So he goes, hits his approach in once. He hits his approach in twice. He's dead at this point. It's a par 5. He takes a triple. It's like the easiest hole on the course. He's losing 4 shots to the field on 1 hole. He backs it up by hitting his next tee shot in the water on 17. I'd almost rather a guy miss a cut like this, where you have 2 blow-up holes. You played the rest of them. Thursday was great. You played the rest of Friday okay. I think this is maybe the type of guy I would want to buy back in on. Maybe it's not Ricky necessarily. I think it could be. He's $8,100. I think it's a pretty good price. He looked good at some points. He putted really well on Thursdays using that new putter now. But I think there's different ways to miss a cut, and I'd rather you miss it like Ricky did instead of, just shooting like 2 back-to-back rounds of 1 over par. Now, under, $8,000, if you really do want to get some of the top tier guys in there, you're going to have to play some of these guys. I think it's safe to say Brian Harman is an option. He contended for a long time last week at the Shriners, has been, piling up top 25 finishes. He's finished 5th at this event before. Siwoo Kim, obviously a more volatile option at 7,100, played well again last week, has popped off at the Wyndham Championship, has finished basically in the top 25 here each of the last 2 years. Again, different course, different country, different part of the world. We are not in Korea this week, but when you get 78 of the top players together and you play 4 rounds, there is some similarities to it, which is kind of also why sneaky little Cam Smith at $6,800 is interesting. He was a fade last week for me. He literally was one of my top 5 fades. He played okay, right? He finished 24th. I think that's fine. I don't know if he paid himself off. I can't remember what his salary was last week, but now he's got a little bit more momentum. He's got a handful of top 25s, even, in the past, 5 starts for him. But look at his history at the CJ Cup. 3rd, 7th, 3rd. You're probably not going to find better history than that. Again, it's not 9 Bridges. It's not Korea. I get that, but similarities in the field composition certainly go a long way. What I want to do to find a little bit more value is I'm going to go back to, there's 2 ways I'm going to do this. I'm going to go back to the strokes gained database. I'm going to go back into the Holy Grail. We're going to run some of these numbers again. We're going to do it since the restart. Again, that's kind of just my favorite way to look at recent form. We're going to bring back all grasses. We're going to bring back all tournaments. We're going to look at this field. I think I've got this set up the way that I want it to. And then we're just going to sort them by salary here. And we're just going to go sub 7K or sub maybe 7,500 and see where some guys pop off. You know, Kevin Kisner gaining nearly 9/10 of a stroke per round. Russell Henley, who if he could putt would be awesome, right? I mean, from tee to green, he's been phenomenal. He's gained in total 1.2 strokes on average per round. That's probably the best of anybody under 7,500. Let me see. Yeah, looks like it. So you've got, Russell Henley at 1.2, Kisner at 0.89, Noren at 0.85, Harmon at 0.8, and Siwoo at 0.86. Oh, and Mac Hughes 0.86. Okay, right. Mac Hughes was probably the name I was looking for. And Brendan Steele. So those are really the 5-ish, 6-ish guys that significantly stand out. Mac Hughes even more interesting because of the events that he's done this at. He's been on such a good run. I'll just show you Hughes before we go over and make a custom model. So he did it. Oh, and he finished third at Punta Cana with no shot link. So actually his numbers would probably be a lot better than that if we had shot link data on him, because we miss out on a third place finish. But look at this. So the last 3 events of the previous season, he goes 13th at the Northern Trust, 10th at the BMW, 14th at the Tour Championship, and this includes the starting strokes, and I think he finished in a tie for 25th. So he moved himself up in position. I think he was like 7th if you remove the starting stroke. So it has been a great run. It's probably actually a bit underrated because we don't have the shot link data from Punta Cana. And then you look at some of the other events that he's had success at. 6th at the Memorial. I mean, how difficult of a field and of a course is that going to be? He finished 2nd at Honda. I mean, he shows up. He can absolutely show up in big spots, playing really well. We haven't seen him in a couple weeks. I think he's probably one of the better options under 7,000. And he might be even more disguised because of the lack of shot link data from Punta Cana. All right, let's do a custom model and get out of here. So this week, again, we don't have the key stats. So we're doing a lot of guessing. So here's my guess at this. I want to take into account that this is a second shot course. So I'm going to go pretty heavily on strokes gained approach. I'm going to put 35% there. I'm going to take, I want distance, but I also want strokes gained off the tee, but they're obviously somewhat related, but not perfectly related, right? So I want to kind of split my weights here. So I'm going to do 15 on distance and 25 on strokes gained off the tee. It leaves me with 25, which I'm going to put on birdie or better. And we'll see what happens here. Obviously this is just kind of an educated guess. Let's see what the model pumps out. Yeah, no too big surprises here. My top 3 golfers, and it's very, very close. Dustin Johnson, Rory McIlroy, Justin Thomas. No real surprise there. Scotty Scheffler, 8,800. A good value when you look at some of these other guys. Tony Finau is my 5th. I'll obviously keep an eye on his status. Patrick Cantlay, my 6th. Hideki Matsuyama, my 7th. Victor Hovland, haven't mentioned his name now in this show, is probably my, 10th or so ranked golfer. When I start to get into real value, my first guy that pops up under 8,000 is Joaquin Niemann. I like that. I always like that he's a kind of a, standout, really, really highly volatile, high ceiling type golfer. I like that. So realistically, probably hard for me to use too much of this. As much as I love the data, I think you also have to realize when you don't have the data. And since we don't have any Shadow Creek data, hard to translate over to the model here. So I think it's going to be a lot of gut feel. I think it's going to be a lot of hand-built lineups this week. I think that, as usual, I think one of the big studs ends up winning this. Going to try to get as many of them in my lineups as possible with, probably a stars and scrubs type approach this week as opposed to going more balanced and see what happens. But it should be a lot of fun. I'm wishing you guys the best of luck this week. Tweet me at RickRunGood or leave a comment below. Thanks for everything. Talk to you soon.